Keep looking down.
I know it's not a problem.
Okay, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. It's good to see everybody after a 3-day weekend. I hope it was
Hmm.
relaxing and re energizing and rejuvenating for everybody. That's a lot of re's,
Yeah. Whatever it takes.
whatever it takes. Okay, today's so exciting for me. I am here with Whitney Fleming. First of all, for a little stint, Whitney worked for your teen. It was a
I did.
great stint because Whitney
It
is
was.
so talented.
Thanks.
And I'm going to give you a little bio of Whitney, and then I'm going to add my editorial. So, Whitney's the mother of 3 teenagers and co owner of Parenting Teens and Tweens. And now she adds to her exceptional list, which I only did a little bit of. She is now the author of Loving Hard When They're Hard to Love. So, I know it just came out. Yeah, great cover, great book,
Yeah.
a
Thanks.
compilation of Whitney's essays.
Oh,
And I want to say thank you to Whitney because one of the things that I don't think you see often enough, but I've really learned from, is that Whitney helps everyone. So when she finds
thanks.
something that works on social media or something that's working just in general in her business, she shares it, which I think should be the way we all operate, but isn't. And I know I do much
Mhm.
more of that because of my relationship with you. So I just
Oh,
want to thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it.
But it's true. Okay, so let's start with a few of your essays.
Sure.
So as I said, the book is a compilation of Whitney's essays. I would say they're her most popular, but they're all popular. And one of them is an essay about being a good mom.
Hmm.
So I know that's not really where you get to in the essay, but let's just talk about
Hmm.
that a little bit. What does being a good mom look like to you?
Well, honestly, the essay is a little bit about how I started off. As a lot, I think, of young women are and young mothers, we're like overachievers and people pleasers, and we want to be have a certain persona, and that's where I started off. And I have three daughters, and they're only 16 months apart. So I had a set of twins, and then I had my third daughter 16 months later, which is not how I recommend doing it to people. That it was rough, but so in the beginning it was a lot about, honestly, it was about image. It was about how I was projecting myself to other people, how my kids looked, how what clubs they were joining, what teams they were on, and that was where my focus was. And I thought, being a good mom was a little bit more about how my kids behaved and how what they were into and getting good grades. And then the tween years hit, and they hit me like a sledgehammer, and I really started to struggle with my relationship with my kids. And it wasn't the relationships that I wanted to have. And so everything shifted for me. And I was really struggling with one of my daughters, and we were like two rams butting heads all the time. And I realized that trying to be a good mom like the old way wasn't working, and I had to just focus on being her mom and the mom she needed me to be. And I realized I was getting caught up in all the wrong things and that it was really hurting our relationship. And so I just took a step back and realized that I don't think there is a good mom. Like, there's no sort of good parent out there. You have to be the parent to the kid that's sitting right in front of you. And that's where things started changing for me, and really where my writing even evolved was, I realized that, like, there is no such thing as a good parent. There's only the parent that you can be to your kid at any given time, and what that looks like on one day is totally different than what it might look on a different day.
What I love about it is if there were some kind of good mom, we would all know
Mhm.
about it, right? Like it
For
wouldn't be
sure.
a mystery to us, and it's a mystery because
No.
it's so darn complicated.
Right.
Um, so I'm gonna go to this question. So you hit on it a little bit, but is parenting a little like a constant recalibration? Like
Mhm.
for parenting, does it have to go wrong before
Yep.
it goes right?
So I use this analogy quite a bit. Like, you have to play the hands you get dealt, right? So, like, I don't necessarily think things have to go wrong, but I think sometimes you're a little luckier than others, right? Like, there's your kid might have special developmental needs, or you might have family dispositions that prone you to a mental health issue, or there might be an environmental issue, or your kid just might get caught up in a situation that if you were in a different place in your life, you might not get caught up into it. So I do think that you learn a lot more from the mistakes, obviously, but I also think sometimes it's just a little bit of luck on where you are in any given moment, in any given time. And so I know that I have gone through phases with all my kids at different times where I've had to recalibrate and realize that what was working for us before is not even close to what is working for us now. And I've had to change my approach. And a lot of it is often me and my own issues at any given time because they're kids, right? Like they're not really supposed to know anything and they're going through all this development and their bodies are changing and their brains are changing, but I'm an adult and it's a little bit up to me to act like that. And that was a little bit of a hard thing for me to grasp because I always wanted to control and I had to really step back and realize that I needed to change.
Yeah, that word control really resonates with me. That was like a big
It's
key of
hard.
parenting younger kids, like I'm in charge,
Mhm.
and then haha.
Yeah. Right, right. Because you
Yeah.
can't, like, somebody said something to me the other day that they were like, somebody said, like, we were talking about like forced family fun, and getting your kids to do some things. And the teen responded, the mom was like, come on, we are doing this today. We are going somewhere. I forget, someplace silly. And she's like, unless you're going to pick me up and move me from this room, I'm not going. And the mom was said she was like 5'2" and her daughter's like 5'9" and she's like, I couldn't physically do her. And she was like, she was kind of right. And I had to rethink everything on how I was going to approach this. And you forget that sometimes you can't make them do these things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the deeper question, which we won't get into today, is could you ever really make them do things? I mean, you could physically,
Right.
right? But
Physically,
now
not,
you've lost the physical, so now you have to rethink it all. Okay, so
yep.
you spent many years writing about your girls, three
Mhm.
girls close together in age. Did they get to vet everything? Did they?
So in the beginning, like I really didn't ever know where I was going to go with this, and I still don't sometimes. Like I never set out to write a book of essays, or I didn't know where this was taking me. So I originally started like writing on Facebook, just like little funny things that happened during the day, and then this was like 8 or 9 years ago, and people were like, "You should start a mommy blog type thing," because that's what everybody was calling it back then. And I didn't really know where my voice was and what I wanted to write about. And so I didn't talk to them that much about it. I just kind of told stories. And then started gaining this following, and I got really nervous about what was going on, and I wanted to protect my kids' privacy. But that's probably when they started hitting the like 12 is when I was like, okay, we really need to start talking about this and figuring this out. And I was just really lucky because a lot of people came up to my kids at an early age and said, "Your mom's really helping me by making me feel less alone." Like we would be at like getting her haircut and a mom would start talking to me. And my kids saw that. And, there's a quote that Brene Brown talks about in Atlas of the Heart in her book. And she says, everybody wants to be around vulnerability, but nobody wants to be vulnerable. And that is something that really spoke to me. And that's like my superpower is I've always been able to be vulnerable and find comfort in that. And I think I've taught that to my kids unintentionally. And so they've always been able to embrace it. But I am very careful about what I share. Like I try to be authentic, but I'm not out to exploit my kids in any way. If I think I'm close to that line, I talk to them about it. They're allowed to vet it, but there are times I write about stuff, like I've been writing a lot about high school graduation because it's about me. It's about my feelings and it's my story. And if you really look back at my work, it's not about them as much. It's about learning about me. And I really try not to lecture. I'm not here to tell anybody how to live their life or what they should be thinking. I only say I went through this and this is what I learned about myself. And if you can take something from it, that's great. But if not, go on living your life and figuring out what works for you.
Did you
So
read the book Bomb Shelter?
I have it's on my list, but
I
I've not
can't
read about
remember
it yet.
who's the author. What's her name?
I cannot remember, but it's on my Goodreads
Okay.
list.
Well, anyway, we interviewed her and she said, I never talk about my kids. You think I do,
Yeah.
But the
Right.
whole story is
Right.
about my reaction to an incident in their family. And it's
Right.
fascinating. Then you go like, oh, it's true. She never
Right.
talked about her kids. I
Yeah.
did talk about my kids. They didn't always
Mm.
let it go. It didn't always
Yeah.
get put forth.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, sometimes like the other thing that works in my favor is, I write a lot of memes, and on Instagram especially, a lot of their friends follow me. And so I've gotten this good rapport with a lot of them where they think I'm funny, and I try not to be mean-spirited, but the only time I think my one of my daughters gets a little bent out of shape is if I ever post something about like a messy bedroom. All of her friends are always like, "We know this is about you." And so that's the only time that we've ever really had a problem. But I also have a rule that I said, if there's it, I told them from the beginning that if you ever want me to stop, or if this is ever hurting you in any other way, you let me know and I'll drop it in a second. And I would. And that was always the deal. And so they've always been incredibly supportive, and I feel so lucky about that.
That's great. Great
Mhm.
modeling. So you do have a title for the book. Do you get to pick the title of the book, or is that a publisher?
That was my title. So I self-published this book. So
Oh,
it's all, I put the money for it and everything, because I really
buy the book, guys, if you're listening. Help her out. Buy the book. It's a great book.
buy the book. And but it's and that is the one thing I have had a couple of teenagers say, "Hey, like, what does this mean, loving hard when they're hard to love? Are you saying I'm hard to love?" And I always have to reframe it a little bit, and say, it's not about like that you're hard to love. It's about loving harder in the hard parts. So, when you're struggling with your kid, and they're being snarky, a lot of us just want to throw our hands up in the air and walk away. And that's actually when we need to lean in. So, that's a lot of what, I try to write about is like when you go through these hard times with your kids, no matter what it is, if they're lying, if you catch them doing drugs, if they're sneaking out, all the things that we deal with, mental health problems, like, you know, nobody knows how to deal with that stuff. And I could tell you every time how I dealt with it, and it probably wouldn't work for you. But we could always like love harder. We can always learn more. We can always try something new, and we can always encourage somebody to keep going. And that's only what the book is about. I just want people to feel less alone in their struggles.
Well, in my family, I didn't do this well all the time, but when I did do it, it
Mhm.
worked so well. I tried to hug them when I really
Yeah,
was frustrated with them,
right,
and it did, like, the negative emotion dissipated from that
right.
physical connection,
Yep,
because it's so easy to be mad at them all the time. Like, they're not
it
being
is.
us. They're not doing
Yeah,
exactly what we wanted, right? All
right,
those millions of
right.
things.
Yep.
Okay, I did not find this essay to read, but someone told me when I said I was interviewing you, they said, "Oh, she wrote an essay about trying to get her girls off of social media."
Mm, right.
So I
I
want to,
didn't put that one in the book. Yeah,
yeah, I want to hear how that one
yeah.
went.
Um, so this one is real. It's probably been my most popular social media post. And when we were going through the pandemic, one of my normally good-natured kids, she just has a really positive, sunny disposition, started just being really snarky and negative and just not herself. And I really noticed that the amount of time she was spending on her phone was problematic. And she had even, started some social media accounts without telling me, and was doing some sneaky stuff. And we had always had a pretty open, honest relationship. So it was a lot of problems. And so basically, I started realizing, when I would tell them that they need to get off their phones, they would, but they would wander around the house aimlessly, and then they'd end up right back on their phones. So I remembered that when my kids were little, my mom was in her previous life was a preschool teacher, and she said if you teach your kids how to play by themselves, like you get down on the floor with them and start playing with them, they will learn how to do this, and eventually they'll play on their own. And she was right. Like the more you taught your kids how to fill their time, the more they could fill their time on their own. And I started thinking about this, and this was kind of what we had to do with their phones. And so it's not enough that we just say, get off your phone. We have to teach them what to do with that time. And so I spent an inordinate, and I know I'm privileged because I get to work from home. So I had a little bit more flexibility, but I have friends that have done this who work full time as well. We started filling our time with stuff that it didn't involve mindlessly scrolling. Because I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody, like, tell your kid just to get off the phone. You have to teach them, though, how to use it responsibly and effectively and constructively. So, long story short, basically, I had a kid that liked live music. So we started finding like free concerts, or we would do different things for that. One of my daughters wanted to go back to playing the piano. So we found an app to play the piano, and we had a portable keyboard, and she taught herself how to play a lot of songs on the keyboard. My other daughter was a runner. And so we started setting her up with all of these different programs and apps and things like that. So I spent a crazy amount of time teaching them how to live life besides mindlessly scrolling, which was killing them on the inside with mental health issues and comparison and things like that. So the whole post is not about just taking the phone away, but learning how to live a life where your default coping mechanism is not just to go scroll on your phone. And you also have to model it, which is hard for me because, I'm on social media all the time. So I had to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so, it was a long process, but when it all started, because when I was at the beach, a friend of mine was like, how did you get your kids off their phones all the time? And they were reading books and doing other things. And I said, this is how it worked. And it's not easy, but they're worth it. And that's, the whole approach. And it sounds so simple when I say it out loud. Like, I'm wondering, like, am I sounding ridiculous? But like, this sounds too, stupid, but it's, at the end of the day, like, we have got to teach them how to use their phones in a way that isn't a tether, and that they have to just how to learn how to use it in a way that helps them live their life, not be consumed by it.
I would say your mom's advice and now your advice to parents is true for everything. We can't be
Yes.
told as parents not to say something without replacing it with what might work better. And that's
Exactly.
for every single thing. Like, you don't take away without filling the vacuum it leaves.
Exactly. That's exactly the whole point, is you can't just say, don't be on your phone, get off your phone. Like, what's the next step?
Right.
And that's like, that is really with everything. So that was, it's by far the most popular post. And then people always want to say, well, just don't give them phones. But I am a big believer in teaching kids how to use technology responsibly. And the only way they're going to do it is if you start doing it at home and modeling it for them, but also, just like you said, teaching them how to use it effectively.
All right. This is just one I want to hear about because I remember this experience. You posted a picture of or I think the girls took the picture of the three of them at prom. And I was thinking what a nightmare it was to get one kid a dress at a time. And you had three at the same time. So was there a moment where you lost it?
Not dress shopping. I was pretty lucky with that. And, they're older now, so a lot of it is independent. I mean, it was not a super fun experience. You always have this vision, of them you going and everything's going to be simple, and they all have different tastes. They're very distinct individuals. And so, we didn't find all of our dresses at the same time. But it worked out. But yeah, it was, we almost, like, I felt like I was having an outer body experience during the day of prom, because we were trying to get pictures of them all. They were all going in different directions. Like, my daughter's hairspray cap flew off and broke, and she couldn't spray her hairspray, and I don't really wear hairspray. And that sounds so stupid, but for a girl in the middle of prom. So I'm literally like driving. I had cut like my leg on something. I'm like bleeding. I'm driving to go to where one of my daughters is, and I'm calling my husband, like, you have to go to Ulta and get this hairspray. And I'm trying to like tell him. And my daughter was, and I'm like, feel bad because my daughter's getting ready. And I was like, I just kept telling myself, like, these are like, first world problems and everything, but seemed like so big at that moment. And I just remember whisking into all these parents who are all calm, and they're all having a cocktail and enjoying the prom experience with their one kid. And I was just like, I have three kids, and they're all going, and they were all like, I'm so sorry, and everybody was really empathetic. And so the whole story behind that photo was, I had just texted them. I wish I had the photo now, but I texted them. Also, I'll pay any amount of money if you guys all get a picture of the three of you together. And then they sent me this clown photo where they're all like doing different things, and faces, like one has the duck lips and everything. And they said they were like sending me their Venmo so I would pay them money because and I rejected the payments and stuff. So I am very fortunate. They are very sassy and they have fantastic senses of humor, and I think they get, because we're pretty close now, that I am, I want certain things and I'm a highly anxious person, and that sometimes they have to bring mom down a few levels as well.
Well,
So
I love that picture more than any posed picture. Like, I know it was posed, but it was like a little it was light. It was fun. Like
yeah,
they were having a good time.
they
Okay,
did. Yeah.
so I'm sure parents come up to you all the time because of the platform you're on and say, "What's the best piece of advice you can give me as a mother?" Maybe they have a sixth grader going into middle school or about to
Yeah.
enter high school. So what's your best piece of advice?
My best piece of parenting advice is to work on yourself. If you are if you are aware of your own issues and your own triggers and the things that set you off, you can be a better parent, a better human, a better everything. And once I figured out that sometimes my kids were bringing out the worst in me, then I had to figure out what that was. Everything changed for me. My writing changed, my parenting changed, my marriage changed, the way I deal with people changed, like everything changed. I realized that, I have to be in control of me first. And I have to be honest, like I didn't have like traumatic upbringing. I don't have a lot of, I don't I've had a very lucky life. I've been a very lucky person. But I am a highly anxious person. My mind goes at a million miles a minute. And I have to be aware of that. And once I realized I could control that a little bit more, it changed everything. And my relationships, every single relationship, whether it was parenting or not, became better. And I just became happier in general.
Yeah, I mean, what you learn, right, is that the only one you can change is you. And
Mm-hmm.
then I always tell my therapist we're a 2-for-1 deal because, of
Yep.
course, my husband's changed in the story because I've
Right.
changed in my reaction and parenting as well.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yep, that's the thing. Like I realized that, a lot of what, and it is taking a step back and recognizing that, what frustrates me about parenting books in general or any self-help books is they often say these things and then you try to apply them and they don't work. So for example, like picking and choosing your battles, right? How often do we hear that? And then I'm like, and I talk about that. I'm like, what battles? Like this battle seems important today, so I'm going to focus on it, but tomorrow that battle seems stupid, right? So how am I supposed to know what battles to pick and choose? And sometimes you can't help it, like the battles just pick you. And so I say, like, you have really got to decide. I don't just say pick and choose your battles. I say sometimes you have to sit down with yourself and figure out what's important to you and write that down on a piece of paper. And then when your kid is needling you, you've got to decide, is this something that is important to me, or is it something that I can get through, and I should really address it and go from there. It's a lot about, again, knowing yourself and then being upfront with your kids about it, and then you guys can all work on it together.
Yeah, and it sucks that the only thing that you can change is you, but
Mhm.
it's never not true. Like you have to be able to look at yourself and it's hard, frustrating work. And the other piece of it
Yeah.
is you're not going to get it right all the time. So like this
Yeah.
pick your battle implies that you
Right.
show up as your perfect self every
Right.
time.
Well, right, right. And that's what I tell people too. Like I to be honest, when people say like I'm a good mom, like I feel like laughing. Like I can't take it seriously because I feel like going, I've made 1,000 mistakes to get to this one story that I'm sharing with you where I got it right. Like I'm not a great mom. I'm a good writer. I'm a great writer and I strive to be a better person. And but I'm not a great mom. I mean,
It's
I
not
make
a
mistakes.
destination. It's
It's
not a
not a
destination.
destination. No, and yeah, sometimes I'm a good mom. Like sometimes I get it right, but you might, like there's 1,000 times I get it wrong. And so I face the same things as everybody else. I'm a great writer. I'm a good storyteller. I'm authentic and I'm willing to be vulnerable, but trust me, like there was a time my kid didn't put, the top on the blender and I was cleaning off cherry, smoothie off of my ceiling, just as everybody was posting on my Facebook page, "You're the best mom." And I freaked out about it. I was like, what? who doesn't do this? And I yelled because I was stressed. And, meanwhile, people are on my Facebook page because I wrote a post saying, oh, you're such a good mom. And meanwhile, my daughter's in tears because, we had cherry smoothie all over the place. We're all in the same boat.
Yeah, but I think you are a good mom in the sense, and I think we should all strive to be a good mom in the sense that we can own some of the things that are our fault in the
Right.
relationship, and we can say, let's try and do better tomorrow. Like
Right.
that's the good mom isn't saying I've
Right.
arrived. It's that,
Right.
and that's true for every relationship. That's true for our marriages.
Right.
It's true for everything.
Right. Again, I strive to be a good person. If I can make the right decisions for my kids, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think that makes
So,
you, I think that makes you great. Okay, so your kids are, some of the twins are leaving, right?
uh,
And you're entering a new phase. It's hard
yep.
to anticipate what that will look like, but like, what are you most worried about right now as two of them leave?
I mean, everything. It's a very chaotic, crazy world right now. And so, as somebody with control issues, it's hard to um it's not that I don't, it's like my mom used to say when she used to let me stay out past curfew. It's not that I don't trust you, it's everybody else, and that's kind of where I feel right now. It's the unknown. I do think they're so ready to go and fly the nest and do these different things. But I mean, I'm worried just about life in general and all the issues that are going on in the world right now, and keeping them safe. That's really the only thing that's top of my mind, and trying to teach them as many things as I can to so they can make the best decisions that they can when they're on their own. But they've really proven themselves that they're ready, and so now I just am trying to let go. They just graduated high school this weekend, so it was not exactly a restful restorative weekend for us, but it was exciting. And I like leading up, I was very teary because I think now in high schools everything is a last, right? Like last awards night, last season, last this, last home game, and everything felt like this last. And even though I focus a lot on gratitude and it being in the moment, it was just so much of this heaviness, especially having two. It was just constantly in my face. But then high school graduation was joy, like seeing all the joy, and my mom was there, and seeing my mom hug them and all the joy surrounding me. I could really kind of feel it, and that was a good start to the beginning. So
Okay, here's my last question. I offer you, as the mother
yeah,
of my baby just graduated college, so
yeah,
5 kids out of college. My youngest
yep.
is about to turn 22. Like, ask me one question.
I would love to know how, and I always admire, when I see your post on Facebook, how close you look to your family and your kids. And I'd love for any advice on how you stay close to your grown kids. What's the advice there?
Yeah, I mean, I really, first of all, I'll tell you that having kids home during COVID was a fast track to parenting adult children, and it
Right.
didn't go well, which was the most striking thing. Like one kid walked in
Mm.
the house and said, "Could I have a shelf in the refrigerator?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like we're a whole family here, right?" And
Right,
then like
right.
3 weeks later, I said, "The shelf is yours. I understand it."
Yeah,
She lives
right,
alone. She
right.
prepares her own food the night before. She gets up the next
Yeah,
day and someone's eaten it. And I was like, okay, they didn't just step back into their household of childhood.
yeah,
It had to change. And so I would say one of the big things that I feel really good about, and it isn't without hurdles along the way or continued
mhm,
hurdles, is that the relationship is the highest priority at all costs. Like
mhm.
I apologize for things I never did. I mean,
Yeah,
if my kid feels like I hurt their feelings over something and I think they're insane,
right.
I still go to I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like when you realize the North Star is the relationship, and it's not a given, right? Like when your
right.
kids get older,
Yep,
it's not a given.
yep.
So that is my unexpert advice to another
Yeah.
mother.
Well, that's great advice, because I get asked already by people like whose kids are grown, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get through high school. I was like, I'm just trying to get them to graduation. But I hear that all the time. Is like, everybody says, you think it's hard now, wait till they're really living independently, and keeping that relationship intact is exceptionally hard. And I never really thought of that, because I grew a lot closer to my parents after that. After I realized I didn't know it all, I grew a lot closer to my parents. But yeah, I hear that a lot. So that's great advice to keep in mind.
Whitney, oh, first of all, can you put the do you have access to the comments from you on the right side of the screen? Can you put
Oh, I can see. Yeah.
can you type a link in there so
Oh,
people can get your book?
actually, I don't know if I can type.
Oh, okay. So
So
let me do it for
yeah.
you. Where can
Okay.
they go to get your book?
Right now my book is, because I self-published it, it's only on Amazon for right now,
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
working on getting it to other retailers.
Okay, so give
So
me the name again. It's how
it's
to
loving hard
uh-huh.
when they're hard to love.
When they are hard
To
to love.
love. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. Now, yeah.
Michelle Holbrook Mugford, who maybe is related to Sharon, says, "Loving your book. Thank you." Michelle, are you
Thank
related
you.
to Sharon? Anyway, let's see if she comes back on and lets us know. All right. Whitney, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for all the great work you do to help make us all feel less alone in our parenting journey.
Thank you.
And it was great to have you here today.
It's on me. I appreciate it.